I'm AJ Grant Scrutton. I'm the creative director on Disney Illusion Island and the CEO of Dlala Studios.
First, I want to ask you, what was your biggest lesson your studio took away after Battletoads?
Don't try and make 14 different genres of a video game in like 10 months. No, so all jokes aside, scoping definitely was the big thing for us. And for me, especially in particular in my role, you know, Battletoads was definitely one of those where we got very, very excited about everything. And when we tried to put everything in, and production would be telling me the whole time, like, you haven't got time for this, you can't do this. And I'd be very interfering and be like, but if we move this to here and this to here, then this one day can move. So yeah, so the big difference is that when we got to the end of pre-production on Illusion Island, we instantly downscoped because production were like, hey, like, this is how long a biome is going to take you. Right now you've got 5 and you can't fit 5 biomes in this time.
Right.
So, you know, so we cut down to 3 at the end of pre-production. Thank God we'd gone through Battletoads and learned those lessons then, because I wouldn't have liked to have learned those lessons on the Mickey Mouse game.
You know, so like Battletoads was a Microsoft IP, and now, you know, Mickey is a Disney IP. Like, what are some of the challenges of working with other person's intellectual property? Like, does it stifle you creatively when you have to have things look a certain way, or when the client's like, well, we don't like when Mickey looks like this, change him like this, or vice versa?
We've been really lucky. Like, you look at Battletoads and we've redesigned all the characters from the ground up, made a new world. You know, we set the story 26 years after the last game. I think it was 26 after the last game. So there weren't a ton of restrictions there. Obviously, the big difference between what we were doing and what had come before was, like, we were the first Microsoft-owned Battletoads game, right? So that meant that we couldn't necessarily go to teen older audience. We had to kind of hit that PG-13 sweet spot. So that was kind of what we had to do with BT, really. It wasn't necessarily a ton of creative constraints. It was more just being aware of, like, it's a new day, it's a new owner of this, let's be respectful. Mickey and Friends was completely different. Like, every creative itch I could have scratched was done with this. Like, this, I feel like I'm a bit of a strange one with this, because, like, I'm a creative director of over a decade who doesn't have this dream original IP, because I get to do cool things with characters like Mickey Mouse. So yeah, so creatively, I definitely felt completely fulfilled by a Disney Illusion Island. I think I expected it to be a lot harder to work with Disney. Disney know this. I'm happy to say this. Like, I went in expecting there to be, you know, 100 year of rules for this character that's nearly 100 years old. The big thing they made us focus on was, like, the journey's just as important as the outcome. As a studio, and very much because of, like, Battletoads and the nature of it, we would often be like, we'd love our first idea. So, like, we'd have a character design and we'd be like, yes, this is amazing, let's do this. And what Disney really helped us to focus on was, like, hey, like, that first one you did is awesome, right? But why don't you do some more? Because you'll either find out that you've got something better in the chamber, or you'll realise that you've just proved out that your first one was awesome, but at least you've been on that journey. And it sounds really obvious me telling you that now, but as a studio, we've been so used to sprinting from day one that we really never gave ourselves that time. So that really not only changed Illusion Island, but changed how we work as a studio. Like, when we onboard people now, I feel a bit cheeky because I explain to them, like, the importance of the journey, and really I'm regurgitating what Disney taught me. But yeah, so, like, there wasn't a ton of constraints. We just had to be respectful, and to make an authentic Mickey Mouse, you know, adventure, it had to feel like Mickey Mouse. So really, the stuff that Disney helped with was, like, helping me find the tone for writing for these characters and just keeping it appropriate for those characters, really.
You know, like, the Illusion Island and Battletoads both looked beautiful. You guys do that hand-drawn animation stuff. You're one of the few people that do. How does that affect your workflow and production line? Because, like, when you have a model, right, in Maya or Max, whatever, you can rig it, and then you just need to tweak the animation a bit. But if someone doesn't like the way Mickey moves, you have to start over from frame 0. Like, how does that affect, like, your workflow?
My tech director, Ben, loves our style on it, but I think he hates me for us making this our thing over the last decade. Yeah, exactly what you said, right? We can't just go back to the model and tweak the animation. So what that means is and I really wish we could release this one day, we tend to see our games nearly fully done as, like, pencil test. So, like, this is the wonderful thing about working in this art style, is, like, we do scratchy pencil tests, quick sketches, and we get it in the game and we play it. For both Battletoads and Mickey, at some point, every character had like 150 odd animations and they were all sketches. So you got to play as this sketched thing. So really, like, our production pipeline for this is that design will get some initial figures in, what's feeling good, and then we'll get the pencil tests in. And then it's design and animation working together to get something that feels great. And it's not until that moment that we, show it to our friends at Disney, and B, that we start even cleaning up the line work. But yeah, we really do kind of go through that same sort of process that you hear studios like Pixar going through, where like the game at one point was completely black and white sketches.
It was done, right? The animations were done.
Yeah.
Air quotes.
It was done, yeah, exactly that. What's really great about that way of working as well is like we can get the game feeling really good and looking really cool and being like feeling really good, like, you know, this jump feels good, this feels good. But if we do need to make changes, like if a new ability gets added and it means we need a load of transitions or tweaks, it's nowhere near as much work as if we took it through the final and painted it. So yeah, it's definitely different to like a 3D pipeline. But I think for every kind of disadvantage it has a lot of advantages. Like the big thing for me as creative director is I can say to Eric, our animation director, hey, can you do this really weird thing where Goofy's hugging a mustard bottle and like... and nobody has to model and rig a mustard bottle, they can just draw it.
Since you've done both, like, is it the pipeline easier for 2D animation? Like, why don't more studios do the hand-drawn stuff as opposed to just like the 3D models? Is it cheaper to do the 3D models, like in the production standpoint?
It's a good question that I think I'm still trying to answer. So I think the short answer is it's a skill set that isn't around that much anymore. So like Eric, our animation director, he's been in the industry for 20 odd years. He started off cleaning up lightnings on Earthworm Jim. Like that was his first role in the industry. Every other animator on Battletoads had never animated a game before. So we took a load of our TV partners at like Rumpus Animation, who are long-term partners, and we trained them to be game animators. And then India, our in-house animator, who's incredible, we got her fresh from uni. She would literally like walked out the door of university and then she was animating Pimple on Battletoads. It's just not a skill set that's necessarily taught that much because, you know, most of the industry is 3D nowadays, right? So that's where the work is. So I think there's that, because it is such skilled and the pipeline can be the frustrating thing, like you said, right? I think there is that fear of cost. So yeah, like I don't know if it's cheaper or more expensive, but I think it's more time intensive in terms of like getting somebody to where you need to be to hit the bar, right? And I think that I could go out tomorrow and I could speak to a load of amazing 3D animators. I couldn't necessarily hire them. I could speak to a load of amazing 3D animators. It would take me a long time because I know to find 2D game animators. And I think that's really why less studios do it.
You know, can you talk about how this game came about? Like, did you approach Disney? Did Disney approach you?
So we were finishing up Battletoads. It was like 2019, I think just in the summer. And we were trying to figure out what we're going to do next because we have to roll from one project into the next.
Yes. Yeah. Unless you're doing work for hire. Yeah. You have to find something quickly.
Exactly. And so we were kind of thinking, who should we speak to? Like, what IP do we love? And the reality is Disney owns all the IP that's worth working with. Like, they own all the awesome stuff, right? And so we hadn't really spoke since we kind of finished our working relationship together in 2016. And it's not because there was bad blood, but because they were purely licensing. So it wasn't making sense for us because we didn't have a load of money in the bank. So we got a call on the books and we went into this call. And it was Luigi, who I'd spoken to before, and John Drake and Sonoko. And we just had this amazing chat. And it was like old friends catching up. Like, it just felt really nice. We're telling them how we've grown as a studio and changed our processes, and they were telling us how things are different there. And it was really honest because like one of the things that was different, very different now, Dlala wise, or it's better, not necessarily completely different, is I was awful at taking feedback. Like back 2015, right? Like I was so defensive over every piece of feedback. And whilst my wonderful producer there, Kelsey, will probably tell you that I still have those moments, I'm definitely a lot better now. But it was important for us to explain, like, we'd acknowledge that and we'd put processes in place to give our partners reassurance that all their feedback is getting taken on properly. And so we kind of chatted and went through all this stuff. And then at the end of the call, we kind of said, like, hey, shall we do something? Shall we do a Mickey thing? And we both agreed. And someone asked me this the other day, and I don't remember if there was ever a formal green light. Like, I remember that conversation and then us back and forth on creative. And then the next thing you know, I'm talking to you because the game's coming out in 4 days. So yeah, it felt very natural, like, and really the whole project has, like, it's just felt like a bunch of friends making a cool video game together. There's not been that weird divide you sometimes get in publisher-developer relationships.
Mm-hmm. Now, like, this game, you guys obviously drew inspiration from Castle of Illusion. Like, I think the rope is directly from that. Like, can you talk about some of the stuff you looked back to when you were creating this game?
So yeah, we love Castle and World. My childhood copy of Castle of Illusion for the Genesis is literally over there. We had this lovely and horrible thing where we get the team to do research at the start of every project, and then there was a bunch of the team that didn't even know what a Mega Drive Genesis was because they weren't.
Oh God.
And then we had this horrible thing where somebody told us their first console was an Xbox One, and I think we all turned to dust. So we went back, we looked at Castle of Illusion, World of Illusion, Magical Quest. Grant, our lead designer, like loves all like the Japanese only Famicom stuff. And so we really dug into Mickey's gaming past. And so yeah, definitely like from the Illusion series, there's nods like the rope drop, there's seesaws in there. Like, because those games are amazing. Like, they look beautiful and they played great and they still play great. So it was important for us to give that homage to Mickey's past. And so then we were like thinking about, okay, what do we want to do that's kind of taken from modern stuff? And so we're like, okay, well, if they were going to make a new Illusion game, what would it be like? What would that team have been thinking about? And so that's kind of where the Metroidvania kind of inspiration kind of came in. And so I think we ended up in this place where we were really influenced by Mickey's past and stuff like Rayman Legends, which I think is probably the best 2D platformer ever made. And then stuff like Ori and the Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps. It became this wonderful hot pot of like all the team putting in their inspirations and us playing these games together and figuring out like where does a modern Mickey Mouse game sit in a world like this?
Is there any pressure when you're like dealing with these characters that are over 100 years old, like Goofy, Donald, like, you know, Mickey, Minnie, these like epic characters that like, you know, it built this huge foundation of Marvel and Star Wars that we sit on now?
Yes, but not from where you'd expect. I'd expected it to be some from Disney and it wasn't. It was pressure we put on ourselves thinking about the fans. It's not a gimmick. We are Mickey Mouse and Disney fans. Like, obviously I've got my lovely display here, but like that plushie there of Mickey I owned well before we started this project. So for us, it was thinking about like, what do the fans want from Mickey? What does Mickey mean to people? And especially when that documentary came out last year on Disney Plus and you hear people talking about what Mickey Mouse means to them, that's the pressure we felt. We wanted to make something that felt new, that felt fresh, but that is authentic. It has to feel like it is a Mickey and Friends adventure. And that's where I personally, and I think, you know, a lot of the team felt the pressure. It was just doing something that felt true to these characters. But yeah, you know, Mickey's touching on 100 and that sits on your mind a long time. It's the company mascot. Like you said, it's what this is built on. But Disney were great. Disney never put that pressure on us. It was really us. In fact, they would tell us we're being dramatic at times when we'd be talking about feeling that pressure. So yeah, that was the main thing. It was like, we want to give something the fans really enjoy.
You know, it's funny because like you mentioned Rayman, and that's one thing I realized, your camera is so far back for a platformer, like much more than I'm used to in like Sonic or Mario, any of those platformers. That is very Rayman. Like you have a lot of space to see what's everything around you. You can talk about how that kind of like came into its conception, why you have the camera so far back then as opposed to closer than like a traditional platformer.
The camera is the bane of our existence. So with this camera, when we started out, we were like, we're going to have one camera and it'll work single player and multiplayer. That did not happen. Every single shot you see, every time that camera moves, Grant and his design team individually mapped the settings for every single bit of the game for both single and multiplayer. Because the big thing we found, right, was like traditional platformer, most of the time you were running left to right, and it's a level and it's left to right at the end. This is omnidirectional because it's a Metroidvania. So we don't know when a character enters the screen, like a player enters the screen, you know, we know on the critical path where they might be going, but if they're exploring, are they going up? Are they going down? Are they going left? Are they going right? So that meant that there's these shots where we pull the camera out to show the player like all the options, like where is it you want to be going? We make sure the camera will be there for you. And then we have what we called internally the single screen rooms, which you might see where the camera locks to a screen. We want you to approach that screen a bit like a puzzle. But then every chance we get, especially in single player, we pull the camera in more, we show you these characters up close and their animations. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure Grant's team were working on camera framings up until the point that the gold candidate was pulled from their cold dead hands. That was probably the most challenging thing on the game, to be honest, trying to get this camera feeling really good for 1, 2, 3 or 4 players.
Now your game is launching exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. Did you guys develop the internal like build internally, or did you guys outsource the port to Nintendo Switch? No.
So we do everything in-house. So yeah, so we knew we'll Switch day one, so we were working on those Switch dev kits straight away, which was amazing because, you know, my first console was an NES, and in my, you know, near 16, 17 year career, I've never made a Nintendo game. So making a new Mickey Mouse for Nintendo game, like for a Nintendo console, was a massive bucket list thing for me.
When does the game come out, and what platforms will we be aiming for at launch? And yeah, I know you're exclusively on Switch, but do you have plans to come to Xbox, PlayStation, or PC later in the year?
So game comes out this Friday the 28th. Yeah, debuting exclusively on Switch. We've not had a chance to think about anything beyond Switch. Like Switch has just been our life for the last 3 years.
Optimize one platform, please, and we'll get that one out.
Honestly, I can't tell you. As someone who has developed multiple multi-platform titles, being told we just get to focus on one platform was amazing. What better platform for a Mickey Mouse local co-op game, to be honest, right? Like the big thing we did design-wise, like if you play our Battletoads game, we use every button on the controller and then modifiers, and like you get cramped just playing it. So when we came to making Illusion Island, we said, hey, like if someone has got one Joy-Con and they're holding it horizontally, I want them to be able to play the game. So the whole game was designed around this concept of the controls are built for a single Joy-Con. So like if people want to play it 2-player, they don't have to buy extra Joy-Cons, they can just use the core setup. It was lovely just getting to focus on one platform.
And then what's next for your studio? I mean, like obviously you guys have such a cool, like unique art style, like in all your games. Like I'd love to see you guys work with Disney on a 2D animated beat 'em up, like really focus on the beat 'em up aspect, you know, take the best part of Battletoads and throw them into a new game. Like what can you say that's next for your studio you can talk about?
Yeah, obviously I don't want to give too much away at this point.
Right.
Because well, obviously, as you know, we've just finished that, so we're early days on whatever we're doing. But yeah, like we want to take the strength of our art style and try some new stuff with it, but staying very true to what makes things Delala. We're fully aware that the bit that even the people that didn't like Battletoads, they liked the combat.
The beat 'em up parts, everything beat 'em up was great. Honestly, I loved everything about the beat 'em up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we do think about that a lot. You know, we'd never made a combat game before we did that, so like we learned a lot of lessons there. But yeah, we're kind of figuring it out. We're kind of in the experimental phase of a few things, but I think we're not changing our business model. We still like doing these existing IP stuff, and we still love doing this quirky art style. So as is common with us, we don't necessarily get to talk about things for the first couple of years, but I do hope that, you know, when we get to a good place with this, we'll be able to start kind of singing from the rooftops what it is we're making.
I feel like there's going to be a resurgence of 2D brawlers, you know, because with the Shredder's Revenge being massively successful, and like I think we're due for like a 2D fighter next, like a really hand-drawn, like in the loot of the Capcom versus series, like right back to its roots. I would love to see you guys do that. Hope you guys end up getting to.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, Shredder's Revenge is incredible. Like they did such a good job of taking a new game and capturing like how I felt when I played the old arcade cabinets, and like and it's nice to see, you know, when Streets of Rage came out, and it's just, these are great kind of properties, and I think that similar to what we did, like they make a new audience. It's not just about serving the pre-existing audience, it's about like how do we make someone's favorite Streets of Rage game that's never played Streets of Rage, or same with the Turtles. So yeah, like it's been lovely to be part of that, and I think we definitely like to kind of come back to the combat-y stuff at some point.